Alrighty guys, welcome back to the channel. Good to have you here. And today we are going to talk about crossing over the crazy line. And what this means is, you know, I think in our society we've created this line where you're either essentially crazy or mentally, you're mentally outside of the norm, mentally, emotionally, whatever it is. And so we get this line and people get stuck over there. So they start out in life, they get at a certain point, whatever, some trauma happens or their health falls apart or something causes them to kind of have this disintegration mentally, emotionally, physically, whatever it is. They get diagnosed. Which is helpful in some situations, especially with like a something maybe like diabetes. You know what's going on because the diagnosis is then supposed to inform the path to get healed, right? But essentially what happens is one way or another, we kind of cross over this line, which we'll get to. It's not actually a line. It's more of like a spectrum especially in the health, in the physical health kind of world. But then in the mental side of things, it's a lot more kind of confusing and a lot more nuanced, but also a lot more dangerous because what happens is people get these lines drawn or they cross these lines where they then think they have become a disorder, essentially. So they'll go seek out, rightly so, they'll seek out help for their depression or for their anxiety, whatever it is, because, something's wrong. And that's a good thing to get help. It's a good thing to go seek out attention and, get guidance. That's all good. But usually, kind of the way our society works now is that when you seek these things out, in most cases, you'll end up with a diagnosis. If you chase it down, and that's what you're kind of told to do, and that's what you think you should do, you should chase down your diagnoses. You think that's what you're supposed to do. And what ends up happening, though, is you cross this line, which you don't realize at a certain point you're going to want to cross back over. But that's a lot harder to do because once you've received a diagnosis, you've received affirmation of being like a sick person in some way, or a broken person in some way, or a not normal person. Once you've crossed over that line, the affirmations are very strong when you cross over that. So, your doctor or your psychiatrist telling you, you have major depressive disorder, you have obsessive compulsive disorder, you have generalized anxiety disorder. Those are strong. So it can be soothing. It can help us to be told, this is not your fault. This is a disorder. It's a sickness. I get that. Yes. And there's some truth to that. But this is all like downhill. This is all crossing the line. What about getting back? What about reversing that diagnosis? What about coming to the place where you don't want to live with this disorder, with this, you no longer want to just be, that person who has depression. You just want to be a person, and you want to heal from that. And I think that's ultimately what a lot of us want. But crossing back over that line, which actually isn't as much a line on the way back because there's not just one point, unless it's miraculous or something, where you just experience healing. Like, it's not like all of a sudden you'll have breakthroughs and insights, but you don't suddenly become, you go in and the doctor's like, great, I'm taking this diagnosis back. It usually doesn't work that way, and for two reasons. Number one, because most people just don't get better with conventional help, and that's really sad because real healing is possible with a lot of lifestyle, change, a lot of the right kind of, whether it's therapy or community or relationships or spiritual, mental, and emotional kind of renewal. A lot of stuff is possible, but the thing is that from the sort of conventional point of view, you'll cross over this line, you'll get your diagnosis, or you'll get your sort of explanation, but you're kind of just stuck there then, and not that many people quotes, give you permission to cross back over it. And I think that's a really sad thing, because we need, not that you need someone else to do that, but we do need people to encourage us, and to maybe say, you don't need to be, you don't maybe need to carry this label. You don't need to live under the rules of someone who does this or someone who has this. It's like, well, I have anxiety, so I never travel or something like that. No, that's taken some of your freedom away. And unfortunately, that's what a lot of these diagnoses do. When we cross over these lines of kind of diagnoses, which seem sort of enticing and they seem to lead us to a place where we can resolve our problems, a lot of times we're stepping out of personal responsibility, and we're stepping into like a prison of some kind. And that might sound kind of harsh, because I know in the short term it can be very relieving to get a diagnosis, and they do serve a purpose, because essentially what a diagnosis is a grouping together of symptoms that we don't quite understand. And so what psychology, one of the social sciences, which means there's no real way to prove anything, it's just made up, it's just categories given names, and you can ask someone this. They don't really know what's going on. They have no idea what's going on with people's minds and brains and emotions. So we try to poke away. The best we can do is group into symptoms. This is OCD. This is bipolar. Oh, now we're going to change it to bipolar with psychotic features. Oh, now we're going to say there's a tinge of generalized anxiety. It's a complete joke, to be honest. Is it helpful insofar as we can then communicate about what's going on? Sure. We can say, oh, like I'm having this kind of symptoms, or it's intrusive thoughts. So yeah, we have recognized that as something that we can call obsessive compulsive disorder. But no one's thing is the same. Everyone has a tinge of this, tinge of that. Oh, it's like they're this kind of bipolar, that kind of bipolar. And I can be called out for this. Like, I know some people might say that this is, incorrect, but I believe that it's just a far better, even if some of these diagnoses do help, I don't think it's not that helpful. But we can only say that if there's hope, if there's actually healing for these people, and if there's healing, if people can come back from some of these things, then we can start to say, maybe we shouldn't be, sort of locking people up with these diagnoses, because there's hope. If there's not hope, then it's like, yeah, this is your diagnosis, and you're stuck with it. You're stuck with these meds. You're stuck with this kind of life. It makes more sense. But if there's actually hope, then we need to start saying that these diagnoses aren't that real. They're not that final. They're not that set in stone, right? So the point is, we need people crossing back over this line, and realizing that they're not crazy, and realizing that the human experience includes a lot of these things, and there's reasons for what's going on. These symptoms and these experiences, as painful as they are information in some way. And if we listen to that information, we can resolve the signals. We can respond to them. But so many people were so far away from what those might mean that ultimately people struggle to get back in touch with what that information really is, and they struggle to resolve their symptoms. They can't connect the dots between their what they're eating and how they're feeling. They can't connect the dots between the fact that they are in a terrible relationship and that it's stressing them out, that they absolutely hate their job, that they, whatever it is, all this information gets, like, our bodies talk back to us, and they let us know, and our minds do, and our brains do, and our spirits do, and ultimately it's in listening in and accepting that stuff, working with it, that we can just start to claim that I'm not sick anymore. There's a lot of power. I remember in some of my worst anxiety and some of my, thinking I was crazy. I was trying to find like a kind of the right diagnosis to say to make it go away, basically. But I had to, at a certain point, I had to say, people would ask, "Oh, how are you doing?" Like, they kind of know, like, it'd been a tough situation. At a certain point, I was like, "I'm good. I'm like, I'm okay." I've taken, like, that might sound weird, but taking responsibility and kind of saying, "Oh, I'm actually kind of good now," it gave me like power and sort of sovereignty to say, "Yeah, I'm taking responsibility now. I'm not just on the run. I'm not on the run from these things." It was like, I can handle some of this. Not all of it, but I can handle more and more of this, and I can start to cross back over that line and say, "Yeah, I don't sometimes understand still some of these fears or anxieties, but I'm working on it. I've taken responsibility, and that's part of of my journey of who I am and where I'm kind of walking back to." And that walking back to is, it's walking out of that prison, it's walking back over that line, and it's kind of reclaiming who you really are. So hopefully that's helpful. My What I feel is important is to show people a path to walk back over this line. And I believe boiling this down, things like the carnivore diet, like what goes into our bodies, like understanding the poisons of kind of this modern way of living that cause a lot of these problems is huge, which led me to the carnivore diet and a lot of these things, to lifestyle change. But we need people to be invited back over this line and to be told that they're not actually crazy. It makes sense. It makes sense that you're miserable a lot of the time. And you're not going to be happy all the time either. So maybe just the final thought is, when you look at these diagnoses, you start to associate anything negative or difficult as part of a disorder or part of a symptom that you shouldn't have in real life. So then you'll never be free. You'll never reclaim, because you're going to think you interpret everything as a signal of your sickness, and then you're basically you've locked yourself out of real life, and you'll never trust information, or you'll never trust your own interpretations of what's going on, because you'll think, "Oh, this is a sickness, this is my mental illness," and that's it's a scary place to live, and there's way too many people living there, so they need to be invited back. They need to know that there's a path to cross back over that line, and you can do it little by little, with all kinds of different lifestyle interventions. Starting very simply, like diet, gratitude, mindfulness, sun, walking, nature, honest conversations, a hobby, coloring in a coloring book, allowing yourself to experience pain, talking to someone, getting, just honestly saying, "Yeah, I feel pain or anger around this thing. What is that?" And it's information. It's not always like, oh, you can just go talk to someone and be like, "Oh, I'm mad because this happened to me," and then it goes away. No, it's more nuanced than that. It's not a super easy thing, but it's real life, and we just live in this bizarre place where we've got the walking wounded or the walking dead, people just chalked up on medications, or living half in these labels, half trying to get by in real life, but just struggling. And life is messy, and there are times when we go through these seasons of darkness, but there's often a reason for going through it. And it's a dangerous thing to walk through one of these seasons, to go through it, and instead of listening to the information or learning or being patient or just walking in it, getting a diagnosis that situation, that season is your permanent reality, and then believing that's a dangerous and powerful limiting belief. So got to break that down little by little, and I'm here to help you do that. So thanks so much for watching. My name is Ben. This is Real Life Ed, talking about the lessons that you don't learn in school or society or through conventional medicine, and hopefully it helps you to walk your way back to more sanity, more wholeness, and more happiness. So I'd love it for you to subscribe if you found this helpful, and let me know in the comments your experience or anything like that, and I will talk to you guys soon.